Welcome. Good evening, everyone. We're excited to have you with us tonight. A bit of housekeeping items before I pass things over to the panelists. We will be having a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Please type your questions in the chat box during or after the webinar, and they will be addressed at the end. If you prefer to speak your question, please wait until the Q&A period and digitally raise your hand, and I can take you off mute. There is a large number of attendees today, so we may not be able to answer all of your questions. The chat box should be located to your right, and if you don't see it, then you can click the button located on the bottom of the Zoom screen, and it looks like a little speech bubble. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the South Shore Joint Initiative's YouTube channel, and a link will be sent to everybody by email. And now over to Jeff Craig, South Shore Joint Initiative volunteer and board member. Go ahead, Craig.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight in this webinar on this beautiful day. As you can see, as I'm sitting on the South Shore and the weather is still lovely. I'm truly delighted at how many have actually joined us tonight to learn from the experts at the Bruce Trail Conservancy about landowner relationships. But before we begin, I just want to pause for a moment and ask you to think about and remember the first time you went to the South Shore, or maybe just a fond memory, and maybe that picture is an inspiration, and just put your head in that space for a second. I can certainly remember mine because it's over 25 years ago. I had 3 very young daughters in tow at the point, and at that point, it was at Point Peter, in fact, and I can still remember the color of the water and that limestone on the bottom, and the shrieks of delight of the young children enjoying the great outdoors of Prince Edward County in the South Shore. And as you think about these fond memories and all of our love of the South Shore, I think that's exactly what inspired our shared vision, which you see here up at the top from our 2023 draft strategic plan. Our vision is a permanently protected Prince Edward County South Shore where together biodiversity and people thrive. And so part of achieving that vision is the creation of a South Shore Footpath. You see 5 strategies along the second row there, basically. So other ones include protecting biodiversity and cultural heritage, and a couple of other ones to boot. But here we are today to talk about the Eco Footpath. And the theory here being is if we can get all of these strategies achieved, then indeed we will achieve our vision overall. So why do we believe creating a footpath will help achieve our vision? Well, as people spend time in nature and enjoy it, the more they respect it, the more they want to protect it, the more they want to conserve it, and the more they want to restore it. It's really that simple, but it's that important. But this likely has been part of all of your life's journeys already, so it should come as no surprise to you. But then also as a population benefit, studies have shown that spending time in nature has physical, mental, and spiritual well-being benefits as well. And then finally, why a footpath? Because it's not a trail. And I don't say that lightly. The footpath is meant to be for people on foot, not vehicles. And this footpath is a walking invitation into nature, which will be designed to inspire the connection between people and the nature of the South Shore. So what is the progress to date? What has been what progress has been made, and why are some of you hearing about this conceivably for the first time? Well, the short answer to that question is that very little progress has been made because it's very early days. And we are absolutely at the genesis stage of this initiative. The idea was originally hatched as part of a survey that went out about a year ago for SSJI to look at the strategic priorities that you saw on the previous page. One of them that came up was the Eco Footpath. So the shaping of that then was further occurred at the SSJI offsite, which a lot of people on this webinar attended last October. So since then, there's been a small group working on it, a core group of about 4 of us, and over the last few months. And one of the accomplishments that we've done is we went out in December. It was originally planned for December, but if you think, or for November at least, but if you think back to November, you may remember a very large and unexpected snowstorm towards the end of November. So we had to postpone that, and out we went to in December, and we basically went from point to point to look at possibilities about where the footpath could go. And at the end of it all, what we did was, apart from doing a lot of walking, and basically we came up with a 40-kilometer, what we're calling is a South Shore Eco Footpath 1.0 that, as I say, was mostly walked and we roughly mapped. Now, before you get too excited or perhaps concerned about what that might look like, I'm going to tell you right now that the vast majority of 1.0 is actually on existing public roads. And that brings us to the fact that this is a long-term project and that there are many, many things that need to be done. And we at SSJI and the Footpath Project really need numerous talented and committed volunteers to both shape this project and to make it happen. And that actually brings us to tonight and the webinar on landholder relations. Becoming effective at landholder relations really is the #1 critical success factor for the footpath. If you look at the map on the slide, you will see that there's a combination of land ownership across the South Shore. And you're not meant to look at this in any great detail, but what I can tell you, and this map is on our website, is that there's land owned by the government at the National Wildlife Area, at the East End in green. There is the conservation, soon to be conservation reserves at Ostrander Point and Point Peter in yellow there. There's also, as you see there, all sorts of, in the lighter yellow, that's all private land that you can see the different areas there. And then there's also land owned by the NCC, which is in green, Ducks Unlimited in green, the lighter green, and the Miller Family Nature Reserve controlled by the Hastings Prince Edward Trust. So there's a lot of different ownerships, but it's actually finite. You know, it's not like there's hundreds and hundreds like the good folk at the Bruce Trail Conservancy had to deal with, 900 kilometers, and I have no idea how many landholders. Here it's finite, but we need to build a relationship with each and every one of these entities so that over time, we can move the path off of the public roads into more interesting terrain and waterfront to achieve our overarching goals. So this may sound like it's a bit daunting, but the good news is that we take the first step here tonight by listening to the experts from the Bruce Trail Conservancy who have kindly volunteered their wisdom, their experiences, and their insights with us. And to that end, we have Klari Kalkman, who's the Landowner Relations Director from the Niagara Bruce Trail Club, and Lyndsey Wilkerson, who is the Landowner Stewardship Coordinator for the Bruce Trail Conservancy. So as I said, we've got experts on the field, and they have over a 50-year head start. When they are finished, I'm going to do a quick wrap up, and then we will move to the questions that we talked about earlier. And while there are likely many questions, we're going to prioritize the ones on landholder relations to take advantage of our guests. We will record all the questions and the webinar overall that don't get addressed, and we'll be sending out a survey afterwards in addition to that to get feedback and to ensure that all these questions and any other areas of interest and perhaps concerns can be identified. And that will likely set up the stage for another webinar. So without further ado, I will now pass it over to Klari.
And let me just get my screen up here. Okay. Is that showing well enough for everybody? Thanks. So So we are, of course, further down the road, no pun intended, of course, in terms of how we have developed our landowner relation function in Niagara. So in the last year and a half or 2 years, I saw the need to enhance the role of the volunteers and ensure that they have the tools and training that they need to really be able to foster a good relationship with our landowners. Niagara has about 130 landowners, maybe somewhere between 10 to 20 of those are municipalities and large institutions like Brock University and so on. And then there are maybe on the order of about 80 private landowners, and the balance are small business owners of whatever sort that are land-based, like wineries, farms, things like that. So, we are extremely dependent on them for the trail. In the instances where we are not able to pass through their land, the trail must pass along very busy rural roads and is very dangerous. So it is our priority to try to work with the landowners to make that happen, to see if we can get the trail off the road and maintain those good relationships so we can keep the trail through their properties. And also with a long-term goal, which will be unique for the Bruce Trail, and I think is not of interest to South Shores, is the Bruce Trail, we in the long run would like to buy that land and secure the trail in perpetuity. So that's a little bit of a difference for sure. But I think the key elements that will be of interest that may provide a useful target for you to get to some of the information is probably immediately useful, and others you will I suggest you may well think to put in place as you go, because there will be a need, I'm pretty sure. So we've more carefully defined landowner relations and the role of the landowner relations director. It's really important. We have a number of different directors who are doing different functions and may be involved with landowners from time to time. So it's really important that communication among those different folks is fostered, and that we've actually created a mechanism to ensure that there's regular communication points among those folks. So it would be the landowner relations director, the trail development and maintenance director, and the president at a bare minimum. So those folks need to be connected and talking to each other. So there is a very defined role description, and the approach itself, it used to be really rather more based on just dealing with issues of landowners. And I think we can go beyond that to foster a positively oriented relationship and engage what we call the landowner ambassadors, the volunteers who work directly with their landowners in doing the work, so that the work is spread out and is manageable for everybody. And if you have volunteers who really have the footpath at heart and are really dedicated, you need to engage them and make sure that they have bought into their role and they want to play that part. So so that work, the landowner relations work, is to assist landowners with their needs. So what can we do for them? And Lyndsey's program, the Landowner Stewardship Program, is a big piece of that. That was started 3 years ago. It's brilliant. It not only assists landowners with their needs, but it also demonstrates that we are responsible stewards. And I think that is a very important concept to get across. If you are helping to maintain a footpath or do anything like that, that you're responsible in using it, and you're responsible in stewarding it if that's part of your role. It is incredibly important to express gratitude. These landowners have agreed to let perfect strangers cross their land throughout a year, and that's extremely community-minded and gracious of them to do so. And I think at every point possible, it behooves us to express our thanks and gratitude for that privilege. And we have two particular touch points through the year. There's an annual calendar package, a token of appreciation that we pass out in the late fall, and generally, except not through COVID, of course, there's an annual landowner appreciation event of some sort. And that's being restructured past COVID. But what I have proposed and what my replacement will be taking forward is to plan touch points for the landowner relations volunteers each season, to have some good reason to go and connect with their landowners. So to build that relationship, what can we do to build it, right? And build it positively. So after a while, as things really flush out and you've got lots of volunteers going all over the place and so on, you may well down the road need a committee just to make sure sort of the key people coordinating things are, on, stay on the same page. So this is how we have organized it. Meeting quarterly, 3 times as the key group, and once annually with the volunteers. And that's a really great opportunity for the volunteers, the landowner relations volunteers, to meet each other and meet the key people involved in the club. And it was very interesting. I had everybody introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what the trail means to them, right? And that was an incredibly interesting moment where everybody shared their passion and dedication to the trail and the concept of the conservancy and the goals of the conservancy. So I must say that was a rather powerful moment, and for everybody to get inspired by everybody else. So I highly recommend that. So I talk about the landowner ambassadors, and this is the same thing as the landowner relations volunteers. So ambassador gives the right feel for what these volunteers do, which is they're emissaries, if you will, of the of the group, and they do represent the group in that fashion. We've created a formal role description, so it's very clear what they are and are not responsible for. I have organized the all of the private landowners and some of the other institutional landowners that, you know, we want to keep on the, we want to keep a little bit in a little tiny bit in their face in a good way, into routes of 8 to 10 neighboring properties. This is quite manageable for volunteers to be able to do. So if it's at all possible that you can match landowners to somewhere near their own neighborhood, that puts a neighborhood feel to it that could be of great value. Ideally, if you have enough volunteers, putting them together in pairs provides a lot of flexibility, as well as some confidence in speaking to people, because you know, the first time you go out, it's a little nerve-wracking and so on. You don't know these people, and you want things to go well. And so I think that has worked out extremely well. And then the volunteers need to, part of that, you know, feeling of confidence is that they feel adequately equipped, both with tools and with training. So I've developed a route kit that has a map of their route, where they can see the trail going through the properties that they are responsible for, and also the landowner information in a list, you know, and other various things like business cards. They can, you know, put on their contact information. It looks more professional, and note cards, that blank note cards that look very nice, that people can, you know, write personal remarks to, personal notes of thanks. So, for instance, in the annual calendar package, which is you know, one of our tokens of appreciation, I encouraged I had done it the year before. I did somewhere around 60 or 80 handwritten cards. So I got the volunteers to do it this year, to, you know, handwrite that. And I got feedback. People are touched by those personal messages. You know, these are personal relationships that you're developing, and to express what it means to you to, you know, to have access to that footpath, or what it, you know, and to really make that point home for the landowner, I think is really very important, that you connect on that personal and emotional level. So I have also developed a key document that I call the landowner list by route. And so this way of just keeping track of things in a manageable way. It doesn't have to be, this is like a really low tech, sort of easy peasy sort of way of keeping stuff on a spreadsheet. It's just the latest landowner contact information, and some columns of what you are doing for them, and, you know, you date stamp it. That I would suggest that whatever you want to call it, the Landowner Relations Coordinator or Director, sort of masterminds filling that information out annually and keeping those spreadsheets available online, so that everybody can go and see it, and that and have access to that organizational knowledge. what I instituted this past year was online landowner relations reports, super simple. And that's just to basically, what were the conversations like, provide a date, how did it go? Is there any action? And was it positive? Was it a positive interaction, right? What was the tone of that meeting? What can we do to solve or address, what the needs of that landowner is, and work together to respect their land and allow them to keep saying yes to us, to grant us the right to walk through their land. So all of that is, those informational pieces are online on Google Drive. So that's just an extremely flexible system for sharing across or outside the organization as you want to. People can be set up as just a viewer or a commenter or a full editor. So it's just exquisitely flexible in terms of sharing the information. I would suggest training once a year, because you will have you have turnover in any organization, whether it's a volunteer organization or not. It will happen. Get over it and plan for it. And yeah, that's sort of most of what I wanted to say at this point. So, Lyndsey, let me hand it over to you, and I'm just trying to figure out how to do my stop share here. Hello. Maybe Kathleen can help
There
me.
should be a button at the bottom, Klari, that you can click that says stop.
Button at the bottom. Okay. There should be a button at the bottom, and which is not coming up. So,
might be at the top.
I see one at the top, and for some reason I can't get my mouse to, let me see if I can do escape here. There we go. Got it.
Perfect. So I'm going to start on here. And can everybody see the Landowner Stewardship Program, the slide that we've got up right now? Yes, okay, excellent. So thank you, Klari, for that. And I just wanted to actually really thank Klari. Klari has been a volunteer with the BTC for not all that long. She started during COVID, and she has been doing amazing things to help to reinvigorate our landowner stewardship or our landowner program, Landowner Relations. So the BTC has been in existence for over 50 years, and we are still learning the best ways to communicate with our landowners and to also help to thank and show appreciation for our landowners. And Klari has been a big help in that. As Jeff mentioned, the Bruce Trail is over 900 kilometers long with 400 kilometers of side trail. We do cross over 700 private landowners. So that is a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, a lot of organizations, and maintaining that good relationship is really one of our biggest priorities, and the BTC is really hunkering down to improve upon our current strategies for landowner relations right now. As it stands, the Bruce Trail is divided into 9 different clubs, and Klari happens to be the Niagara Club, which is the southernmost section. And so we have 9 landowner relations directors. We have 9 clubs that are doing things 9 different ways. That can be, again, a lot of moving parts. Some volunteers are phenomenal, like Klari, and others just don't have the time or the resources to be as hands-on as Klari is. So the program does vary from club to club, and the BTC as an organization is helping to improve upon that currently, so that hopefully we can build up our whole landowner relations program. So one of the things that we actually created several years ago now, about 4 years ago, was our Landowner Stewardship Program. And that came about as a joint initiative between the Bruce Trail Conservancy, the Nature, Stan, you'll know these names more than I remember them right now, Nature Trust New Brunswick, and the Couchiching Conservancy. So the three organizations all recognized that we were all dealing with private landowners, and we wanted to find a way to pool resources, and which we were able to do under the help of the Gosling Foundation and Stan's assistance. And through that, our Landowner Stewardship Program was born only a handful of years ago. Pardon me. So we are still learning. So don't feel entirely lost that you don't have all these programs in place and you don't have the staff resources. Take it one little bit at a time, and hopefully some of the things that Klari and I bring up today will help your organization to learn from where we've gotten to in our program and where we're still going. So a little bit about our Landowner Stewardship Program. It is all about building a partnership between the BTC and our landowners, as well as encouraging that habitat conservation. So the Bruce Trail's main focus is to preserve the Niagara escarpment from Niagara to Tobermory. And we are doing that not just on our Bruce Trail owned lands, but also on our publicly owned lands through conservation authorities, as well as on our privately owned properties as well. And the Bruce Trail is an excellent steward of our own lands. We do a lot of restoration work, we do invasive species removal, and we were sort of creating these islands of conservation in Bruce Trail owned lands, and we were almost neglecting the spaces in between that were privately owned by other landowners. They allowed us to cross their land, but we weren't doing anything to improve that habitat. So what we're finding quite often is we might remove an invasive species from our property only to find it return again 6 months later because the seeds have dropped from a neighboring property. So we realized, long-term goal here is the entire Niagara escarpment as this ribbon of wilderness, as is our sort of our catchphrase. And so landowner stewardship is about caring for the land in a way that is beneficial for everybody, but also helping to bolster the biodiversity in that space. And the best people to do that is the people who love and live on that land. So in the case of the South Shore, some of these people may have been there for several generations. Some people may be relatively new to that space and have never known what the past habitat looked like. And you have a unique opportunity to sort of get all of that experience and pull it together and help to treat this, as Klari said, as one community and pull everybody together. So for the Landowner Stewardship Program with the Bruce Trail Conservancy, it's a free voluntary program that our landowners can sign up for, and it helps to support the private landowners to maintain that unique environment. We do have staff on the BTC, so myself and 2 others that are staff ecologists, and we usually will do a land visit to actually sort of ground truth what we're seeing in the space. But we also do offer virtual consultations where people can tell us, I'm dealing with an invasive species, or I'd love to plant pollinator, friendly plants, and we're able to help them to bolster their local ecosystem. And the program goal is to support the private landowners. Again, that relationship, top notch. And Klari's program is helping us to really keep this Landowner Stewardship Program as a touch point as well for her team, that she can go out and say, I noticed that you happen to have invasive species on your property, and we have a program that we would love to connect you with to help you to improve the ecosystem and show you that the Bruce Trail isn't just interested in crossing your land, we're interested in being friends, partners, allies in this space. And also, as Klari mentioned, the Bruce Trail does hope to eventually preserve the entire Bruce Trail along the Niagara escarpment. Right now, 71% of the Bruce Trail is permanently secured. The other 29% is still held in private landowners. And that means that at any point in time, a landowner could revoke access to the Bruce Trail, and then we are having to go through several kilometers of roads to be able to reconnect the trail. We might have to abandon some of our nature reserves, you know, because we don't have access to them anymore through the trail, and now they're just sitting with, you know, vacant trail on them. So very, very, very important for us to maintain that relationship. So some of the benefits to the landowners is this extra level of assistance. Not everybody is an ecologist, not everybody has an awareness of biodiversity, and we can help the landowners with that. But we also want to take into account what they're interested in learning about. If they really love butterflies, we want to figure out what butterflies they love and what can we do to help that. They really love birding. That's a really common one. You know, we want to plant trees and bushes that encourage the birds to come and visit. They've got English ivy that's, you know, taking over their garden, and they want to see something a little bit, you know, more native in that space. These are all things that we can help with while keeping the landowner's goals in mind. We also do help with sourcing these native plants and physically putting them in the ground. So we usually help anywhere from 5 to 10 landowners a year with their stewardship work. And that's through the Bruce Trail staff as well as volunteers helping. And usually the landowners get their hands dirty as well. They'll come out and grab a shovel and help us out. Some of the resources that we offer for our program is our Landowner Stewardship booklet. And this is something that our volunteers can drop off to landowners. This was, you can actually see some of our partner organizations with the Klari Conservancy and Nature Trust New Brunswick at the bottom. And we put out this pamphlet that sort of mentions our landowner stewardship program, and then our volunteers can hand these out to our landowners along the way. And next to that is a sign that we just had created last year, and it recognizes and celebrates the landowners that have participated as a stewardship partner. And this is sort of a double-edged sword for us. This allows us to recognize that landowner, but also helps us to promote the program and to show others that this program exists. So if you are a local, you know, neighbor and you're walking your dog every day through this trail space and you see this sign suddenly go up one day, you're going to say, aha, what is this? And there's contact details at the bottom to learn more about the stewardship program that we do have. And we know that our landowners care very deeply for their land, and that makes them the ideal stewards of their properties. We all share this responsibility to care for the land and can all be a part of the conservation effort in our own way. And pictured here are some of the landowners that we helped over the last couple of years. So on the far left is a landowner who's near Waterdown, and we have removed just about every invasive species that we have on the Bruce Trail just from his property alone. So we've been on that space for 3 years now, have done several plantings, and some of his goals are to help create a privacy barrier. As you can see, there's a very large organization that has popped up in the distance from his space. So that was one of his concerns in removing invasive species. And then in the middle, we have a landowner who owns a 99-acre farm, and the back, I think it's about 3 acres, has a pristine woodlot, not a single invasive species in that space. And she allows the Bruce Trail to cross through that. And it's this lovely little oasis that is filled with thousands of trilliums, just absolutely thousands. And what we were able to do to help out Kathy last year is she has a small section of field that is no longer being farmed. And we went in and planted another 16 different species of plants to help to encourage that forest edge to come forward a little bit more. And Kathy is reaching a point in her career as a farmer that she no longer wishes to be farming 99 acres of land. And so we are actually discussing with Kathy the ability to donate the land or to sell it and receive a charitable tax receipt to the Bruce Trail. And that way the Bruce Trail is forever preserved in that space, and we are going to keep maintaining that pristine woodlot that she has with these amazing trilliums and spring ephemerals. And then on the right side there is a field visit with actually 3 of our staff ecologists and the landowner for a property. I think that one is Beaver Valley, and might be Sydenham. And they have a little bit of everything. So they have an old Scots pine plantation we're helping to remove, and we're also doing some native plantings to help keep the privacy, again, for their space, and the Bruce Trail crosses along the back end of their property. So some of our landowners in Niagara have a little bit less space to work with. So we're helping them out as best as we can. And then we have other property owners who have 99 acres and are thrilled to have us help to steward some of their spaces. And through this, we're hoping that our landowners truly understand that the Bruce Trail Conservancy is a conservancy and we are excellent at doing conservation work, and that hopefully they're inspired to continue to support our mission, continue to allow us to cross their property, as that is such a key part of the equation here, and to permanently preserve the trail for everyone forever. And I think that's it for myself. Yes, Klari.
Yeah, and just further to, I should also mention that to your presentation, I should mention that the Niagara Club, and I think a few of the other clubs, have put in place biodiversity committees that sort of work part and parcel with work that you're doing, and organize pool parties and things like that for volunteers to go in and clear out an area of invasive species, to do work like that with landowners, if they're interested.
Yeah, actually, to that point, Klari was instrumental in taking a piece of Bruce Trail that has been on roadway for as long as I can remember, and she went and knocked on it was 12 doors, 10 doors?
10 doors.
10 doors, and talked to each landowner independently and asked permission to reinstate the trail along the Niagara Escarpment, which is in the back end of their property, so nowhere near their houses. And one of the things that we were able to offer the landowners once the trail was reinstated, thanks to Klari, was offering them a group hike to show them what was in their space. So we took them out, we offered to take them out in the spring to walk through the property, to highlight the special things. Some of them have wild ginger, they have a lot of spring ephemerals, there's a trickle down waterfall that you can only see in the spring, and show them that we see those unique features in their space, and we're there to help to preserve that for them. And we're maintaining it as a footpath. It is the same as South Shore. It is a footpath exclusively when owned by the Bruce Trail Conservancy. And yeah, we were able to encourage our landowners to come out to participate in an invasive species pull. And we brought on people from our board and our volunteers, staff, and landowners. And it's a great community event to get everybody together to do that. So I see in the chat, Klari, Mark was asking how long is the Niagara Club trail route and how many landowners are you working with? So I know you did answer that at the start, but do you want to just confirm your trail length if you're aware of it?
Yeah, we're about we have about 80 kilometers of the Bruce Trail.
So not the longest, but also not the shortest of the trail sections. But I think you also happen to have one of the sections with the most amount of landowners, because it's a much more urban area, and a lot of the other parts of the trailer are more rural. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's these 10 landowners. I mean, this was a block, right? So, but yet. Some years ago, one had said, and when we did go and talk to them about reinstating the trail, we did find out the reason why they said no several years ago. But one of the 10 saying no incurred a reroute along Ridge Road on the outskirts of Grimsby. It's a very fast and very dangerous section of rural road there. So, and the reason why they said no, when we just talked to them and, you know, about their land and asked questions and tried to understand where they were coming from, was that they felt that hikers in the past had not been respectful of the land and of the plants and animals whose home it is there on that land. It was in fact, our values were completely aligned. And that's what we found out. They weren't grumpy, they had reasons, and the land had not been respected. So it was really wonderful to, you know, finally achieve that understanding and be able to move past that.
So Klari, Mark had also mentioned that he's walked that reroute and knows what you're talking about the traffic, and said well done on getting the trail reinstated there. Mark also, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to, I did want to say that was a complete team effort on, you know, from the Niagara Club. So I was in the mix. So
yeah, and this was volunteer-led initiative. So yourself and Alicia, who is the club president, were in contact with all these landowners, and the Bruce Trail Conservancy consists of only about 25 staff, and we have over 1,500 volunteers who do the work of 65 full-time staff for the BTC. So we are exceptionally blessed with the volunteers that we have. We have incredible people like Klari and like Alicia, who are on our team that we could not do this work without. And as the South Shore is building up its team, the volunteers in your squad are going to be so very important to you as well, and will be your own community in there. Mark also asked about,
actually, Lyndsey, let's come back to that next question when we get into the Q&A if we can. So I'm just going to do a quick little wrap, and then because I've got a feeling the next question is going to spawn a whole bunch more questions. So
okay.
So I'll just if you can give me back control, I'll share my screen, and then we'll get to more questions. While we're doing that, I am really who knew it's part of my reaction overall in terms of what we just heard from Klari and Lyndsey. So thank you very, very much. I got to say, I think it's probably 2/3 inspiring and 2/3 overwhelming. But you know, undeniably, you've just taken such a successful, purposeful approach, and it's clear that, you know, underpinning that is that whole bit about what can we do for them and the importance of, you know, supportive partnerships with landowners. So I mean, that's key. And then of course the second part of that is around what you just mentioned, Lyndsey, which is the volunteer base. That's incredible as well, which kind of is a perfect segue in terms of where we're going. At this point in time, we have I think 4 volunteers officially on the project, and so we have a bit of a ways to go. Now, I also like to say that compared to the Bruce Trail, you know, we're only about 4% as long, and we only have about 4% as many landowners as well. So, you know, that it's only a 4% of the task. But anyway, thank you both. That was really, as I said, both inspirational and who knew? Fantastic stuff. You know, before I wrap and move to questions, I want to just briefly discuss potential volunteer roles that we need now, and then we'll need moving forward. And of course, first and foremost is the one around landowner relationships. So I think I had a pretty good idea just listening to both Klari and Lyndsey in terms of, you know, what could be involved. I think maybe when we get into the questions, we could talk about, well, what about first contacts, and, you know, what are your thoughts on that? That would probably be very helpful. And as we go forward, there's going to be no shortage of volunteer opportunities you put up in the area of landowner relationships, but also trail captains looking after areas. And I'm stealing a lot of this stuff, Lyndsey, from the Bruce Trail, so it probably look very familiar. There'll be work crews. I know there's people on who've already said, you know, hey, give me the chainsaw and let's go from there. One of the reasons you don't see our map is because we're really in the need, with due respect to Stan, of a professional cartographer to help us lay it out, although the one we have is very, very good. But we'd really like one of those. Communications is another area where we really have a lot of work, as you probably already know, but around building public awareness and then working with stakeholders beyond just the landowner. So biodiversity teams, Lyndsey kind of mentioned that as well, in terms of, going on site and working and saying, well, what is the assessment here and how can we help? Fundraising, of course, we're going to have to get to that at some point in time. There are people who said, oh yeah, it's going to be easy for this. This is a sexy project. I mean, think of the Bruce Trail. If you look at the impressive list of supporters they have now, if they knew what it would become, 50 odd years ago, they probably would have been hopping on board a lot earlier then. So again, more pilgrim work done by the BTC. There'll be signage, and I can't remember the last one whether I mentioned landowner relations or not. We're going to need people on landowner relations, and we're going to need to do it soon. But I think we've really been inspired about what that entails. So let me just wrap up, and then we'll move to questions. There is no doubt that this is not actually an SSGA, or not just an SSJI project. It's a show of real community commitment to environmental stewardship. I mean, that's where we have to go. And it's a real opportunity for us to make a real difference in protecting the biodiversity of the South Shore. And by creating a safe and accessible path for residents and visitors, we'll be promoting healthy living, outdoor activity, and overall well-being. So that's got to be a good thing as well. And as I've already mentioned, creating a footpath won't come easily, and it will take some time. But I think, as you've heard tonight, we're really fortunate to have an example of best practice and excellence, quite frankly, as a resource with our good friends from the Bruce Trail. I mean, measuring almost 900 kilometers in length and over 50 years old, the Bruce Trail is Canada's oldest and longest marked footpath. But in their own words, the Bruce Trail is more than just a footpath. It plays a crucial role in protecting and preserving one of Canada's irreplaceable natural wonders, the Niagara Escarpment. And I've certainly had the great benefit of walking along it, and all of that is completely true. So we've generously been given the beginning of a blueprint to build our own partnership with our own landowners to encourage habitat conservation along the South Shore. But we will need help. We will need volunteers. Can you get the clarion call? Everyone, each of us, you, me, have a real opportunity to shape, contribute to this project, and to make it happen. So please seriously consider getting involved, and we can all work together to make this happen and move towards our shared SSJI vision and make it a reality. So with that, let's move to questions. Feel free to pop them into chat. There are a few in there right now. Put more in, and if we run out of those, you can raise your hand and we can just do them live. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Catherine to moderate the questions.
Yes, hello. So the next question here, can you describe the types of agreements you have in place for trail access on private lands? Who would like to address that?
Yeah, I'll take that. We have almost entirely what we call handshake agreements, which is we just simply have a verbal agreement that, and there is something that's actually written, and I have never seen it used. So this is just simply a goodwill thing. I mean, there are more sophisticated, you can get easements and you can do, severances. So you can do those kinds of things if you want to make something formal, but in general, they're just handshake agreements, verbal agreements.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is the basis of the organization is handshake agreements. And then, as Klari mentioned, because we are an organization that is acquiring land, There are easements that have been permanently granted to us to allow access to that space. Because we're a land trust, we are allowed to sever off sections of property. So if a landowner wants to sell, the back 40 of their land, we do have the ability to sever that into 2 different parcels. They can keep their house on their part, and the Bruce Trail is on the back end. And from their perspective, nothing even changes, because we're never going to develop that space, and we're never going to do anything more than have a footpath.
Thank you. There's another question. How do you address the issue of the risk of liability when seeking public access to private lands?
So I can address that. The BTC does have insurance. So because we are a formal organization, formal charity, we do offer our landowners that peace of mind by having liability insurance. And I can't recall what it is off the top of my head, but I think it's in the case of $2 or $5 million.
I think it's 5.
Yeah, I think it's $5 million liability insurance. So part of that handshake agreement is mentioning this to the landowner to know that if they allow the Bruce Trail to cross their land and somebody does happen to trip or fall, they are not liable in any way, shape, or form. The Bruce Trail is, and that is covered through our insurance. And that is actually a major relief to a lot of our landowners, because in some of these properties, people are going to go off trail whether there's a trail there or not. So whether the Bruce Trail runs there, there are several very impressive waterfalls in Hamilton that I can think of where people have misused the space, and we have been access has been denied for the Bruce Trail Conservancy, and people are still using that space many, many years later, and that landowner no longer has the protection of the Bruce Trail's insurance. It is now under their private landowner's insurance. So it is a big relief to most of our landowners that we offer that insurance aspect.
Thank you. How much of the South Shore waterfront is walkable? Not sure. Anyone?
Well, I'll take a stab at that, but that one is a big, it depends, and I don't know. The reason it depends is because if you look at a high water mark versus a low water mark, that completely changes the essence of the shoreline overall. There are other factors involved in it. Is being able to get to the shore and walk on it are 2 different things. So there are certainly a number of different access points when you can walk along the shore. It's actually also quite difficult to walk for any length for the most part along the shore, given the nature of the the loose stones that are there. But I think that when we get the trail, let's just look into the future and sort of wave our magic wands, and when we're done, one of the greatest things about the South Shore is when you actually pop out onto it. So if you go down, well, just about any access point, and all of a sudden you pop out and there it is, you see it, and it's fantastic, right? It is absolutely just an amazing feeling, and it's nice to walk along there for a while, but it's also, having walked through some of the areas in Point Peter and the Conservation Reserve, and when we were doing it, we were walking along ATV tracks, and the same thing goes for Ostrander Point. It's such a beautiful walk. Like, it is really, really beautiful walk. And that was in December when it was super wet. So that's a tough question to answer. Like, if you go around, the lighthouse at the far eastern end of Point Traverse, I mean, you can walk quite a long, long way along there, especially at low water mark. So it will depend. I think it'll be important to have areas where you can access along and walk along the beach for a while. It'll be important to have, where you can walk there and do a loop and then come back. And so, there'll be a bunch of different opportunities, I think, as we go forward. I hope that answers the question. It's certainly not an answer in kilometers.
Thank you. Next question. What are the key things to take into consideration when talking to landowners for the first time?
Okay, so I think there's 3 things that you want to have in your head. That first, you want to have a respectful introduction, that you are hopefully on the verge of starting a long-term relationship, and that you will be building this relationship incrementally. So bit by bit, time after time after time, right? And so you do want to be prepared. You want to look professional, and you want to reassure them and provide evidence in some fashion that your outfit is organized and prepared to take care of things, or you do whatever you assert that you're going to. So it's building confidence in the other party that you are who you say you are, and that it isn't just all talk, but there's action, and you keep building that relationship with inviting them to a pool party, or at least letting them know it's happening in their area. So you're building confidence that you're doing things. You certainly have to be prepared to explain yourself, why this and why this now and so on. But do less of the talking. Ask questions and listen carefully and find out where that person's coming from, and think on how you can, how you can approach your values together, or how you can connect them, and try to work with them. I see there's a related question: how do you handle landowners who absolutely want nothing to do with you? And that's for sure a toughie. If they would at least accept, some token of appreciation, and we do that with, for instance, landowners who are on the optimal route, but the trail doesn't actually go through their land. But we will often, give them calendar packages and things like that anyway, because we want to encourage that relationship in relation to the future. So it's not just this moment in time. You're always looking, through the short term to the long term, to keep that going. We do occasionally have landowners who say, off you go, and so then you respect that, and you work on building the relationships with the neighbors beside them, because neighbors talk and they might come around. So you never know when things change in somebody's life. And, so that's that state now, but it can change in the future. So you should always keep that in mind, that that's only that state of affairs now.
Yeah, to add to Claire's point, sorry if in the background it's a little bit noisy. My kids are heading off to bed right now, so my apologies. I have a 2- and 4-year-old, so they can be spicy landowners sometimes too. So this is really a long-term game here, and we always are looking for opportunities to encourage the landowners to see what the Bruce Trail Conservancy is all about. So a few years ago, we offered all of our landowners a complimentary membership to the Bruce Trail Conservancy, and that allows them to get a copy of the magazine, which highlights some of the amazing work that we're doing. It also allows them access to all of the guided hikes that we have, so that they're able to see and appreciate what is actually happening on other sections of the trail. And then work with Klari and her landowners allows, a calendar to be dropped off. Some of our sections do a barbecue sauce, some do honey, some do a thank you get together or a potluck picnic. And again, it's all about offering different things, and then also understanding where they're coming from. So perhaps at this exact point in time, they're not in a space where they're wanting to have random strangers crossing their property, but touching back again in a year's time and, you know, reconnecting or finding another reason to stop by on friendly terms that's not an ask to cross their land, is encouraging that relationship and building that trust in the long run.
I think we have reached the end of the questions. Oh, there is something else popping up. How do you handle use despite your protocols? For example, the waterfalls.
So in some of our more heavily trafficked areas, we have actually had to hire security to cover sections of the trail that are being misused. So typically our hikers, we have over 400,000 people a year who use the Bruce Trail, and they are typically phenomenal people who are there for a day hike, a long-term hike, and are respectful of the space. However, we do have a lot of tourists that come. We are in close proximity to Toronto, so some people take a day trip and they've never been on the Bruce Trail before and are not as familiar with leave no trace hiking. So we might have garbage, we might have off-trail use, we might have foraging that's happening. Each situation requires its own way to handle it, but we have had to hire security in for some of our more popular areas. I myself have performed security at one of those locations in Hamilton, and we have hired formal security guards at other spaces. And the plant aspect is something that we're still working on right now. So yeah, that's the foraging aspect is something that we're still concerned with, and we're doing our best to install signage without being overwhelming on signs, because some people can get sign fatigue. We don't want to, you know, turn it into Las Vegas with a million billboards along the Bruce Trail. But we do have some people who do forage, and we try to discourage that through our social media channels, and also putting up signage that mentions the unique biodiversity in a space, and please stay on trail and not to disturb it. Do you want me to take that question? Because I can answer it.
Okay, you just have to repeat the question.
Yes, yeah. So the question is, has the Bruce Trail Conservancy ever been sued? And yes, we have. And in most cases, it is somebody who has fallen and has injured themselves. And generally, those injuries have actually happened because somebody has been off trail, and they have not been using the space in an appropriate manner. So we have had people who have fallen and have sued after the fact, and we've been able to prove that they were off trail because the trail has been in a marked and safe space, and that if you are on the trail and using it appropriately, then no injuries should have occurred. The next question on that line is, 5 million enough insurance? I have never had to personally handle. I've been with the BTC for 7 years, and I handled the stewardship work, and I've handled membership in the past. I am going to take a wild guess here and say that if this was ever proven to be not enough, we would have increased the amount. So we have never been sued where we have been found to be at fault, and 5 million insurance has not covered the damages done. But to my knowledge, in the time that I've been with the BTC, we've never been sued where we've had to pay out any damages because it has been proven to not have been the fault of, you know, an improperly maintained trail or an improperly placed trail.
Right. It's 8:12. I don't see any more questions coming in. Are there any other comments by panelists or any remarks that you would like to make?
BTC, thank you so much for your work. You know, your work has allowed so many people to connect with nature that would not have otherwise. And, you know, that in itself is a safety valve for society. It's helping us all to deal with the stresses. And so thank you for that work. It's much appreciated. And having hiked the whole route with a wonderful little community, it was such a meaningful experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. And it's nice to be regarded as sort of a beacon, as an icon to look towards, creating an organization that, you're starting out on the ground floor here, and you're able to learn from some of our mistakes and also learn from some of our successes, and have the opportunity to talk to people like Klari, who do this as a volunteer piece and are forever building our organization to be a better space.
And I would just end on saying, this is, don't worry, start somewhere and start small, and don't worry too much. Just keep going. You are the first link, and you provide the start to links that will come after you. And just keep it simple and start. Do it.
Great. Well, thank you, Klari and Lyndsey. And anyone who's spent any time there just loves it for what it is, and you've affected probably millions of people over time. And you don't stop when you're there to think what goes on in behind it. So you've offered us a really great look at that, which, as I said, has been very inspirational for our own journey, especially those last words, Klari. Thank you. I got to start, as always, with the first step, which is will become a very overused metaphor, I'm sure, here. But thank you both. I'd also like to do a couple of other thanks to the South Shore Echo Footpath Volunteer Leadership Team. I don't even know if that's what we're calling us, but that's those three guys there in the water in December, which is Mark Pattison, Joe Dale, and Stan Kozak. So thank you for all you've done, including Stan putting this together. So that's great. And then thank you for the technical support to Catherine. And the last thing I will say before we wrap up is a shameless plug. We have some wonderful new merchandise available on the website at SSJI. We have phenomenal bucket hats, a very, very popular T-shirt showing the life of the butterfly, which, as you know, is very near and dear and special to the South Shore. And we have our first ever tree towel, which is the spectacular design of the tree at Point Peter, which were recognized by the artist Agneta Sands. So there you go. Thank you very much for attending. It was really a great night. And as I said, there'll be a survey coming out. You can tell us what you thought about it, and it'll help shape where we go next. And please feel free to go to the website and sign up for volunteering. It doesn't have to be today. It can be down the road if you're interested, and keep on the insider list, which is now what this group is. And thank you all again, and have yourself a lovely night, and enjoy this fine summer weather that we're experiencing right now. And we'll see you on the South Shore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.